Now, I make a lot of signs on my CNC machine, which I absolutely love, but every now and then I get to make something different, like this, for example. Now, this is a house number made out of acrylic, and I did this on my CO2 laser. So today I'm going to show you how ridiculously simple it is to make something like this, as well as how quick it is, and the best part is you can sell this for a pretty decent profit. So here we are in Lightburn, and as you can see on the screen, we already got our design worked out. And I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because it's very simple and straightforward to do. It's just a rectangular shape, and you got your numbers and your street name on top of that. So that's pretty much what that is. Now, the thing that I do want to draw your attention to is how to create the template that we're going to use to stick down these acrylic letters and numbers so that everything lines up exactly the way you see it on the screen here. Easiest way to do that is pretty much just cutting the whole thing like this out of something like scrap cardboard, or maybe MDF if you got some. That's even better because it's more rigid. And then everything that you cut out of this main shape on the inside is pretty much just going to drop out, which makes a perfect placeholder for your acrylic to just drop back in. Everything lined up perfect. So the first thing we're going to do is cut the back side of the sign, and I'm going to do this out of the black with the matte side facing upwards, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And once that's done, we'll cut out the letters and the numbers, and we'll do that with the matte side facing up as well. Next up, we're going to cut the cardboard template, and one thing you need to take note of is where your laser extracts air from. Mine, for example, has got two extractor fans, one in the center and one in the back. And what you want to do is move the cardboard away from that, because the increased airflow could make your cardboard set alight or just smolder away. And as you can see, doing it on the side like this is perfectly fine, and I've got no issues. Next step is gluing everything together. Now, as you can see, I've got my backing here, and it's already peeled with the matte side facing upwards. And with the letters and the numbers, you're actually looking at the glossy side. So when that gets glued, you're left with the matte side facing upwards. And to glue this, I'm using Weldon number 4, just because that's a little bit more forgiving than the number 3 if you do happen to spill any. And I'm using this applicator bottle. And then I'm also using number 16, which is not as runny as the number 4. And then just something like this to spread it around, as you'll see in just a second. Now, the first thing to do is make sure you get this template on correctly. And for that, I'm just using some masking tape on the edges, going all the way around, and then lining it up perfectly with the edges like this. Now, I'm going to use number 16 to start with, just because that's a little bit more forgiving than the number 3, which is pretty much an instant bond the moment it makes contact with the surface. Now, the one pro tip I can give you here is to try and use as little as possible of this number 16. And if you can, just squeeze it next to the piece you're working on, because this sometimes comes out really fast out of the tube. And the last thing you want to have is so much of it on the workpiece that when you squeeze it down or press it down onto the surface, you get some squeezing out on the side, because that is going to leave an ugly white mark when it dries. And for goodness sake, whatever you do, do not try and wipe that at all, because you're just going to spread it and it's going to leave an even bigger mark. After about 10 minutes or so, you can carefully remove the stencil, which will leave you with perfectly aligned text. Now, this is where things can get a little bit tricky if you have not used an applicator bottle like this before. So I would recommend you just watch this video up here, which shows you how to avoid splatters and little drops everywhere, which will ruin your piece when it dries with little white spots everywhere. So highly recommended, just check that out first. And this, in my opinion, is the best way to bond acrylic, because this is a chemical bond. And if you try and remove these letters or numbers afterwards, you're pretty much going to have to break them off. And that's ideal for something like this, which will be exposed to the elements. Now, while I'm doing this, I want to give you a quick breakdown of what this actually cost me and how much I'm selling this for. Now I'm sure if you go online you'll find different prices, but generally speaking in Australia a sign like this could set you back anything from say $70 to $140+. So the acrylic for this sign cost me roughly $10, probably a little bit less than that. The weld on I paid about $55 for this tin, and as you saw I used so little of it. Overall, let's round it up to $15 in materials. And this sign specifically I'm selling for $70, which means I'm making $55 on this. And start to finish, this was about 35 minutes of work. Now obviously for bigger ones and something that's more complex, you can charge more. These ones, for example, I charged $135. So that's definitely something you can look into if you want to start making signs like these. Now flipping this over to the back, I like to use these little standoffs, and they just glue on the same way. After that, I let everything dry for a couple of hours, and this is the final result. Now the main reason I'm doing this with the matte side facing up is because if you flip this around, you can see the glossy side has got finger marks on it, it gets messy, it scratches easily, and it just redlines my OCD. So if you want to get into making signs like these, go online and have a look around and see what people are making. They are pretty straightforward and easy to do. And if you've got any questions or suggestions, happy to reply to those. Just leave a comment down below. And thank you for watching.